Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordan and welcome to today's video where we are counting down the top 10 book of the month books that I read this year. I'm so excited to be making this video for the second year in a row. It is quickly becoming a staple of mine, right along with my book of the month vlogs that I do every so often. I am not sponsored by Book of the Month. I am a regular paying member, but I love being a member. I love the service that Book of the Month provides. I love keeping up with their books and reading as many as I can. Not only because they often have some of the most hyped and some of my most anticipated books of the year, but also because I like to sometimes take a chance on other books that I either hadn't heard of or hadn't had on my radar. And sometimes I get lucky and find my favorites that way as well. My typical FYI of the moment is that I'm currently feeding my baby because that's when he's quietest. But if you hear weird noises, that's probably where it's coming from. And without further ado, let's get into the top 10. The way I put together this list is I go through all of Book of the Month's regular monthly picks, as well as all of their add-ons from 2024. And if I've read the book, it is eligible to be on my favorites list. So I don't necessarily have had to have obtained the book through Book of the Month, but if I read an arc of it, or I listened to the audiobook, or I obtained it another way, but it was still one of my favorites, it will go onto this favorites list because it is a Book of the Month pick and it is an option for members to pick or add on to future boxes, which is kind of the point here, to give some favorites that if they sound like you might also enjoy them and you are a Book of the Month member, then you might consider adding these on to future boxes. But of course, even if you're not a Book of the Month member, you can just read these books like normal. These are also just general recommendations and a way to give love to a few more books than can make it onto my overall favorites list of 2024. So after tallying up all of the Book of the Month books that I've read this year, I have read 13 of their main monthly picks as well as 11 of their add-ons. So I had 24 books to choose from in making this top 10, and I definitely had some winners in here. All of my top 10 books are either 4 or 5 stars, and I'm excited to talk about them. So getting right into the number 10 book, we have Family Family by Lori Frankel. I have had an interesting history with Lori Frankel. She has written 3 books that I've read so far. Her first book that I read was called This Is How It Always Is, and that was a hard-hitting emotional romance that I absolutely loved and gave 5 stars. Then she wrote a book called 123, which I ended up DNFing. So I was very curious to find out how this newest release of hers was going to work for me. And I'm really happy that overall I really enjoyed it. This is also a hard-hitting emotional contemporary book that tackles the topic of what makes a family, specifically related to adoption, because there are, of course, many different forms that a family can take and ways that they can be created. And they don't all look the same, but they can all be equally special. And this book just explores kind of several different family situations and characters who go through different experiences related to either being a birth parent or being an adoptive parent or being a child in one of those situations. And in reading the author's note at the end of this book, it does seem like this is a topic really close to Lori Frankel's heart, and she does have some firsthand experience with it. So I respected that as well. As someone who has little to no, actual experience with adoption, I don't feel like I can speak on whether the representation is done well or accurate, but I did enjoy reading the author's connection to the topic. My number 9 favorite from Book of the Month this year is Bye Baby by Carola Levering. Carola Levering is an author that I have kind of inexplicably loved. She writes kind of slow burn, character-driven, suspenseful dramas, I guess I would say. They're not really mystery thrillers, but that's most often how they're categorized. And that type of character-driven domestic book is not usually my favorite thing, but something about Carola Levering's writing just keeps me engaged and gets me invested in the characters. This book starts off with a scene of a woman who is in the apartment directly below her former best friend, and her former best friend is throwing a party. I think it's a New Year's Eve party maybe, and she has a newborn baby who she ends up leaving outside alone on the balcony for a couple of minutes, and the woman below her ends up going up and kidnapping the baby. So it's a very interesting opening scene, and basically the rest of the book goes back in time for a little bit and kind of explains how these two women got into this situation, what happened to their friendship, and what their relationship is like now. And then we see a little bit of the aftermath after the fact, and it's just juicy. I don't know what about it is so interesting to me, but it is. This one in particular, again, kind of explores that motherhood topic, which is something I enjoy, and I would recommend this one to people who are here for the drama. My number 8 favorite this year is Only If You're Lucky by Stacey Willingham. This author is really popular for a couple of her previous books, including A Flicker in the Dark. She writes mystery thrillers, and this one is set on a college campus, and it's about this group of girls who all live together in a house, and one of the girls has gone missing, and so the other girls are talking to the police about what they know about her whereabouts. And through a couple of different timelines, we just find out kind of the secrets that these girls are holding and what they know about this other girl's disappearance. This book I have not seen as much hype for, and I've definitely seen some mixed reviews. I really enjoyed it though. I do love a college setting. I think it just perfectly toes the line between mature enough characters to be getting themselves into some really sticky situations, high stakes situations, and especially in college, all of the newfound freedom that comes along with that experience, I think lends itself to that sort of crazy situation being believable, but also the characters are immature enough that it's also believable that they would be making, you know, dumb decisions. It's not like these are full-grown adults with families and everything. So I kind of like that balance, and this one just scratched an itch that I enjoyed. So again, if you like entertaining sort of character study type thrillers, I do think this one was worth a read, and I'm excited to continue keeping up with whatever Stacey Willingham writes into the future. All right, my number 7 favorite is The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. This is a young adult mystery thriller. Holly Jackson is a pretty popular young adult mystery author. She wrote the Good Girl's Guide to Murder book series, and this was her new release this year, a standalone book, and it's about this high school aged girl who, when she was a baby or like 2 years old, her mother went missing, and the circumstances were always really mysterious because she had left this main character in the car as a baby by herself and then was never seen again. So no one ever knew if she ran away, if she was kidnapped, what happened. And now in present day, at the time of this book, there is a documentary being filmed about the disappearance of this girl's mother, and during the filming, the mother actually comes back. So it's all about what happened to her when she went missing all those years ago, and then playing out how that works out in the present day. I have really enjoyed all of Holly Jackson's books that I've read. I find them really entertaining, pretty mature for young adult mysteries, with generally satisfying conclusions. So this one is no different, and once again, I am excited to continue keeping up with what she writes in the future. In the number 6 position, okay, I didn't realize I put so many mystery thrillers all together, but it's The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is a mystery book set at a summer camp, and we follow many different perspectives over many different kind of time periods or points in time, because we're solving 2 mysteries in this book. The first is that in present day, a 15-year-old girl who was a camper at this camp has gone missing. I think she's 15, something around there. And it's an extra intriguing mystery because that same girl had a brother who went missing from the same camp something like 15 years earlier. And his disappearance was never really solved, so it's all about the solving of that mystery through kind of interviews and getting to know all of the different people who are involved with this camp. So other campers, as well as the staff and the owners of the camp, the family of the 2 kids who had gone missing. We get some perspectives from all of them. And this is a pretty long book, so it is somewhat of a slow burn of a mystery, but I did find it really satisfying. I loved the setting of a summer camp. I enjoy Liz Moore's writing. I did like her previous book, Long Bright River, and I'm really glad that this one lived up to the hype that I personally have been seeing about this book. And yes, this did win the mystery thriller category of the Goodreads Choice Awards. So again, I think it's deserving of that. I'm happy that it won. And it was one of my favorite book of the month books of the year. All right, in the number 5 position, we're finally shifting gears and getting to a romance, is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I expect to see this book on a lot of favorites lists this year. Abby Jimenez is a very popular romance author. I have generally enjoyed all of her books that I've read, especially her newest ones. This is book number 3 in kind of a companion series, so some of the characters overlap between the books, but you don't have to read them in order if you don't want to. This one is my favorite of that little trilogy. All of her books are emotional and hard-hitting and have deeper topics. In addition to cute, swoony romances, there's humor involved, which I love in her writing. This one is set in Minnesota, which I think is a big reason I enjoyed it a little bit more than the others. I thought the setting was fun, and it mentioned some places that I personally have been. So that's extra exciting, especially because that doesn't happen all that often in the Midwest. And yeah, without dwelling on it too much more, I think this book and this author are also well worth the hype that they receive, and I loved this book. All right, book number 4 on my list is unexpected for me personally. I wasn't expecting 1 to read this book or 2 to enjoy it as much as I did, but it's Dinner for Vampires by Bethany Joy Lenz. This is a nonfiction book. It's a memoir by this author who starred on the TV show One Tree Hill, which is a show that I have watched multiple times through. I love the TV show. I love this author's character that she plays on the show. And what I enjoyed most about this book is that it focused a little bit on her time on the TV show and her experiences there, but it more so focused on her experience within a religious cult. And again, not typically a topic that I really enjoy or seek out, but something about feeling like I know this character and a little bit about this author so deeply, and yet having no idea that she went through this entire experience was really interesting to learn about. It just goes to show that you don't really know what people are going through, and especially celebrities and people in the public eye. Sometimes they can be going through some really wild experiences that you just cannot see. And so I liked getting the insight of what she went through, and I particularly liked listening to the audiobook of this book because she does narrate it, and she does a great job with that because of course she's an actor. You can hear some of the emotion coming through in her voice, and she also sings in a couple of portions, and she's a really good singer. So I thought that was an extra great experience and something that I would recommend if you're interested in this book. Alrighty, getting into the top 3 books. So in the number 3 position is The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. I actually don't know how to say that last name. This book is one that has really lingered with me for a while. It's one that I rated 4 stars in the moment, but honestly is more like a 5-star book in hindsight. And this is a book with a really interesting premise. So basically, this woman comes home from work one day and she opens the door to a husband that she doesn't know she had. So not only is there this strange man in her house that she is not familiar with, but there are pictures of them together, and after she does more investigation, she finds out that she really is married to this man. But what makes it weirder is that he ends up walking up into their attic, and then when he comes down, he's a completely different man who she now finds out that he has been her husband, and she has no memory of it. And basically this book explores the idea of this woman having this magic attic that every time she sends a guy up, a new man comes down, and it ends up being a different husband of hers. So she gets to explore sort of all these different lives and all these different options for her life, different options for husbands. And while it's somewhat entertaining going through this scenario, it does explore kind of the deeper topic and question of like, when do you become satisfied with what you have instead of constantly trying to one-up yourself or trade in what you have in hopes of finding something better. Obviously, this is a dramatized kind of example of this, but it is a topic. It is something that I think everybody can kind of be introspective about and can glean some life lessons from. And that's what I enjoyed about this book. Not only does it have an interesting premise, something that I love in books is the what would I do in that situation type of premise. This has that. It has its entertaining moments, but I overall liked the deeper message, the thought-provoking element of it, and so I ended up really loving it. And again, it's one that has stuck with me since I read it, let's see, back in April when it was a pick. So if it sounds interesting to you, I absolutely think it's worth a read. I actually think this book would make a really great book club pick if you're looking for a conversation starter, something that will stir up some different, opinions and conversations. And this is one I'm really glad I took a chance on because I loved it. All right, my number 2 book. I'm pretty sure this is fair game because I believe this book was released in December, but I think it was an add-on pick in January of 2024. However, I did not read it until this month, and it's The Frozen River by Ariel Lawson. This is a book that I have heard a lot of hype about, and as soon as I heard everyone describe this book, I knew it would be one that I would love, and I was absolutely right. This is a historical fiction book set back in the 1700s. It follows a midwife midwife who finds herself in the middle of an investigation within this small town. Basically, a man is found dead and he was in the middle of a lawsuit around sexual assault. And this book is interesting because it's set so far back in the past that of course issues of misogyny and like men and husbands feeling ownership over women and their wives is really prevalent. And yet we have a really strong main character who, because she's a medical professional, a midwife, her opinion is really respected within this case. She takes a lot of notes within her day job that help with this case. And as a midwife, she talks to a lot of the women in the town. And so she just gets a lot of information that is relevant to this mystery. And I love that it explored that topic and those hard-hitting topics while still having such a strong main character. And what's extra interesting about this book is that she is based on a real person, and the author's note at the end of this book talks more about that, about how she drew inspiration about this midwife's life and crafted a story around her actual journal entries. I just love all of that. So I'm really glad that I finally read this book and it lived up to all of the hype that I had personally created for it. Highly recommend if you like historical fiction. Definitely don't be intimidated by the very historical setting of the 1700s. It doesn't feel that ancient, and I think it's well worth a read, especially in the wintertime if you're craving those cold, snowy vibes. All right, and then number one, a book that I have been waiting to talk about all year long. I read it back in January, and it should be no surprise because I do think I've mentioned it multiple times throughout this year as a favorite, but it's The Women by Kristen Hanna. Another historical fiction book. Kristen Hanna is an author that I have read multiple times before. I've loved most of what I've read by her. This is a book that follows a woman who is an army nurse in the Vietnam War and everything that she goes through, and it is so emotional and heartbreaking along with heartwarming. It's eye-opening with its information about the Vietnam War and all of the women who were involved in this war who were just completely ignored and forgotten, and the toll that that disrespect took on the women who were involved. I was absolutely riveted by this story. It was the type of book that it took me a really long time to read just because of my life circumstances, but every moment that I wasn't reading this book, I was thinking about it, and I could not wait to find out where else it was going to go. It had me tearing up at multiple points within the book, and yeah, this is not a book that needs more hype. A lot of people loved it. It won the historical fiction category for the Goodreads Choice Awards this year, and I expect to see it on a lot of people's favorites list of the whole year this year, but I really think it is worth all of the hype that it receives. And so if you enjoy historical fiction at all and for some reason have not picked up this book yet, take this as your final sign to pick it up. If you've been wanting to try a Kristen Hanna book, this is my new favorite by her. So I recommend giving it a try because I absolutely loved it. It's my #1 favorite book of the month book this year. It may or may not be my favorite overall book of this year. You will have to wait for that video to find out, but I loved it. All the stars. All right, so those are all the books I had to talk about in this video. Good thing because this little guy has the hiccups, so I need to give him a little bit of attention. But please let me know if you have read any of the books that I mentioned and if you enjoyed them as much as I did. Let me know if I've convinced you to pick any of them up that you haven't tried yet. And lastly, if you are a member of Book of the Month, let me know what your favorite pick has been from this year. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. What do you think, bud? What do you think, buddy?